Who do we have on? Do we have Barry? Offers?
I don't see him yet.
I can't see.
Okay, Barry's here now. Sorry, I couldn't get in the first time.
Okay, great. Can you hear me, Barry?
Yeah, I can hear you good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you good. Okay, great. All right, we can get started. All right, I am going to call the Finance and Audit Committee meeting to order on September the 7th. It is 3:02, and I will read the statement of announcement. Meeting notice announcing the date, time, and place of September 7th, 2021 Finance and Audit Committee meeting was distributed on September 2nd, 2021 to appropriate media and other groups or individuals who have requested notification. The announcement and agenda were posted at the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs Central Administrative Office and on the website. Americans with Disability Act. The public has been notified that accommodations such as interpreters, mobility assistance, or other assistance will be provided to individuals with disabilities and special needs if requested in advance. All right, next item, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
And
Well, before we second, can I add, or
Yeah.
are we considering adding something to the agenda?
yep, you
We need-
want to make it? You want to make a motion to amend it?
Yeah, before I second it, I want to make a motion to amend the agenda very quickly to add finance committee procedures to the agenda so that we can approve that very quickly.
Yep. All right. I also want to amend the agenda. I'd like to add in the topic of the 6.2% FMAP. Pat and I had exchanged an email on it, and I just wanted some clarification about it. So I'm going to add that to the agenda as well. And maybe we'll put it at the end. So can I get a second for the amended agenda? You want to do that?
Well, we need to first the amended. I just amended the agenda, so he needs to second it.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Uh,
All right, agenda is amended with the addition of the committee procedures and the 6.2 FMAP discussion. All right, so next item on the agenda is to review the minutes of the August 13th, 2021 Finance and Audit Committee meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Many minutes are approved as written. All right, so before we go into the directives, I'll go ahead and add the Finance and Audit Committee procedures that we just amended to include. So at the beginning of the new members of this committee were selected by the chairman in June, and as protocol, we like to go over the committee procedures, and we hadn't done that yet, so that's kind of why we're adding it to this this agenda item, because we wanted to do that, I think, the last meeting or the meeting before, and we didn't. So we wanted to spend some time on these procedures, and basically we're going to approve them unless we have any changes that we want to make to these procedures. But I think They look good to me. I think it is worth noting that Commissioner Rawlinson, the chair, appointed Barry Malphris, Eddie Miller, and then myself as chair of this committee. And the particular protocol around the committee meetings is that if another commissioner not on this committee would like to attend this meeting, they should first get approval from the chair of this committee before attending this committee meeting. If they want to listen into the meeting remotely, they can. But if they want to attend in person, that commissioner needs to get approval by the chair of this committee. All commissioners not on this committee can attend after either approval from the chair to attend in person and or online, but they cannot vote on this on anything that this committee votes on or needs to take action on. Those are the main points that I wanted to make for this particular meeting. There are many task force that, as many of you have heard, if you've listened to any of the commission meetings or any of the other meetings, we have a lot of new task force, and we are going to be getting a little more direction on how the task force will be handled in terms of compliance with FOIA, and we're going to resolve that on the 15th. Commissioner Rawlinson is kind of taking the lead on getting clarity for all of our meetings in terms of how they fall under FOIA and what is required and what is the best way to lead those types of meetings. So stay tuned on the other meetings, but I just wanted to clarify for today, this committee, the Finance and Audit Committee procedures basically speaks to some of the nuances that I've clarified today. Barry, is there anything additional that we want to add to that or anything?
No, except to say that the reason for the clarification that you gave regarding the Finance Committee is the same reason it relates to the Freedom of Information Act. And we do need to get clarification, and I hope that to know much more about that clarification before our next meeting, because I'll be very interested to hear what she says. But no, it's all based on the Freedom of Information Act for those that wonder.
Yeah. Okay. So can I get a motion to approve these procedures for this committee that
So moved that we approve the procedures.
Okay. Second.
Second.
All right. All in favor? Say aye. Great. Okay. So the committee procedures for the Finance and Audit Committee are approved as written. And yeah. Okay. So now we'll go to the next item on the agenda, which are the directives. Pat.
All right. We have two directives that staff has edited into shape and that we're requesting that they be put out for public bidding.
Okay.
And in the package, if yours is marked like mine, 5A and 5B, you'll see them.
Okay.
And I think what we've noticed here recently is we're editing so much and down that we should put out the red line copy as well as a clean copy.
Agreed.
Because we're making significant changes and the red line copies is hard to follow. So
Yeah.
I recommend we send them both out for review.
Okay. Yep, I agree. So these have not been, we haven't looked at these before, right, in this
No.
meeting, in this committee, okay.
Right.
And would you just speak to the majority of the changes?
Sure.
Yeah.
250-10 is the capitated payment system for services, which was dramatically changed because of the elimination of the at-home service from the capitated model. It was also simplified in a number of areas. And because we are still in a capitated model, we need to have our directives in line with what we're doing now, which is essentially only the residential services in the community ICF are still in the capitated band, although the ICF is actually a fee for service. But once we vet this to the public and get it approved, if everything goes okay with the IDRD waiver, we should be in fee for service for January 1st. So this may only have a shelf life of a month or so after it goes through the process, but I elected to continue it through the process because we're still in a capitated model and we need to be able to articulate what our how the capitated model works.
Right. Okay. So for 10 days, this will go out for public comment, and then what would be the next step after that? You guys would?
It comes back as comments, and then we would look at the comments and answer, accept or reject them, or, adjust as necessary. And then the committee would get the clean copy as well as the comment copy, so you can look at them if you're so inclined. And then come back, generally talk about the most significant points raised and whether we accept it or not, and why.
And this would need to be approved by what date? Is it January 1? Because that's when the switch or?
It's currently in existence now. I mean, if everything goes great, it would get put out for 10 days.
Next
Probably
30
not
days?
get this commission, get to the next, to you guys next time. And so it'd be at the November commission meeting.
All right. Okay.
But just to clarify, if it came back to us, which it should do based upon what the changes were, if this all goes mute as of January 1st, then I'm not certain I'm not certain we're not using up time, but I guess we can use it for a month. I mean, because am I mistaken in saying that this would go completely mute as of January 1st if we went to fee for service?
It would be completely mute.
Yes, you're right.
We can table it until after the IDRD waiver renewal officially adds the residential settings, which is anticipated it's going to do. If that's the case, then we're going to fee for service regardless, and we can table it. But we put it together because we didn't really, it wasn't until just recently that we were pretty sure that it's going to go fee for service January 1st.
Right.
Well, I don't mind if you want to put it out for public comment. I just don't know if it's going to actually take effect, but I think we need to reevaluate it when it's going to public comment and see if how much time we have and whether it's going to take effect, whether it needs to take effect or not before we approve it.
Yeah.
Unless there's some specific reason to have it approved for 30 days. I mean, I don't see that though. Because I mean, we can go by what we have, can't we?
It's not going to cause any harm. No one's waiting for it.
Okay.
So if that being the case, then we just might as well table it.
Yeah.
Table would be fine. We carried through because that was the marching orders.
Well, I mean, I commend you for doing your job. I mean, that's what we were supposed to fix it and we fixed it. But I mean, it just turns out that it looks like things are going to be different. But I do commend you for bringing it to us and all that. But I do think it'd be prudent to either table it now or put it out for public comment and then decide at that point, whichever you'd rather do, Robin, as chairman of the committee.
I would make this a recommendation that if we just wait until the next finance meeting, we'll know for certain if we're going fee for service, which I think is hopefully almost a certain. And if we're not, then we can table it. And if for some reason we're not, then we'll follow through with it.
Madam Chair, I can so move that.
Okay. So Barry, do you want
I think I heard that. We have some grumbling going on. I don't know whether it's a lawnmower or whether it's some
to?
feedback.
Yes, it's a weed eater
That's
or
in
lawnmower, a blower or something.
That's in Barry's backyard.
Right, that's in your backyard, Barry.
You would think it was, but it must be in your backyard,
Yeah, I know.
Ed. Anyway, I heard that. I'm fine with that. We can just table. I'd say we can just, if I'm not mistaken, we can just table the. He just motioned to table this. What about the next one? Is it? But I think that one does need approval, don't it?
The next directive, the financial management of personal funds, yeah, that
Yeah,
one.
that needs approval anyway, right? That has nothing to do with fee for
Yes.
service.
Yeah, okay, all
So
right.
anyway, we'll just table this one. I'll second that we table the first one until next month, and we'll decide for sure.
All right, so we'll table the first directive on the agenda. Second directive, financial management of personal funds.
This directive, it was reviewed. I would say that the changes are minimal for clarity. You can actually read it with red lines and understand it.
Yeah,
So
individual
it's-
versus person.
Yeah, it's very,
It was straightforward, and
I have no problem with that one.
we went through it with an eye toward simplifying it as much as we can. But when you really look at all the safeguards for our consumers, and I'm willing to get rid of needless administrative requirements, but they were needed to assure our consumers' funds are safe and secure and they're taken care of.
Right, and I see that items of value wouldn't be marked in this new version unless it was 100 or more, as opposed to the old policy had
That's right,
50.
we did bump it 50.
50 or more, so, okay. All right, so we need to approve this to
Public vetting.
public vetting, okay. 10 days, right, and then, okay, we can go back to the commission, okay, to the, this, is there a deadline on doing this one as well, like, this needs to be done by a certain date?
There is no one's waiting for it.
Okay,
And I don't know, is there a possibility for it to be a longer public vetting? Because this is probably one of the more important ones that the provider network would look at.
right,
And if we could, I'm in no hurry to get it back, and I'd rather give them more time than not, but I don't want to break protocols. I don't see Colleen's.
yeah, I think, as our, committee procedure says, it's DDSN's intent to solicit feedback input from all entities affected by the directive standards. However, in rare cases, the 10 business day period may not occur due to excruciating circumstances.
I withdraw that. It's not excruciating circumstances. 10 days is fine.
Yeah, well, I mean, but to your point, I just was kind of looking to see if there was something in here that said that we could extend it if we wanted to.
I don't see, I mean, there's nothing that says you can't extend it. I don't see why you would necessarily. I mean, if somebody requests an extension, we could consider that. I think it'd be more realistic, wouldn't it?
Yeah, okay. All right, so we just want to make a motion to
I just want to
submit
make a motion
this.
to put it out for public comment.
All right, can I get a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so this financial management of personal funds directive will be put out for public comment for 10 days. So if anyone listening wants to weigh in on that, you have 10 days to do that. So please do that within that time if you can. All right, so the next item on the agenda, monthly report for contracts over 200,000, Pat.
Okay, it's number 6 on
Okay,
your
packet,
tabs.
okay.
And we have 2 contracts that are greater than $200,000. And they both have the same profile, but these are existing contracts. Well, they're a little bit different profiles. The first one, solicitation 54000200743, is an existing contract pertaining to post-acute rehabilitation initiative services. And this request is to add a new vendor to the existing contract. Because the contract is at $588,000, it triggers our $200,000 limit. Whether that $588,000 is our maximum award, and we awarded based on our discretion and not a requirement. So we're just adding one more vendor to the approved vendor list.
Okay, all right. So, so do we want to go to the next item and then determine if we want to?
And the second item is an existing contract where we have 7 vendors. And we're going to modify this contract to increase the bill rate from $17 an hour to $23.50 an hour. And this is for direct support professionals that we contract with for our regional centers. And this pricing is temporary based on the staffing crisis that we're experiencing in regional centers due to COVID-19 pandemic. And this will be available for only new assignments. Enhanced bill rate assignments must be approved by DDSN before staff are assigned. So this is a short-term response to our staffing situations at regional centers, because at $17, we can't get any they won't provide us anybody. Or if we raise the rates, they can provide us individuals, because they pay their people in turn more funds for this short-term issue.
All right.
Okay, well,
Your question, Barry?
I was going to say I have no problem with that, except that we need to put an amount of time in there. If you say something's temporary, we need to know how much time is temporary, because if you don't put anything down there for time, then it makes things permanent. So
One
we
It
year.
says pandemic crisis. It says pandemic until it's lifted.
I got my.
It's not 1 year, is it?
Right here? Sure.
Well, we kind of revised it on the change order, because if something else occurs other than the COVID-19 pandemic, this is a 5-year contract. So we don't want to have to go back and revise it. It will be the DDSN discretion when we will allow that rate. That's not controlled by the vendor. It's circumstances depending on the centers, basically. So like you have different staffing crises at different centers, or, you know, if a vendor is having trouble getting assignments and the staffing is low, we have, the agency has the authority to negotiate and allow that enhanced rate to come in to encourage recruitment from the staffing agencies that we're using. And this is a bill rate. So it would be to our discretion. So if we want to place a temporary time limit, that's fine, but
I would just like for us to place some time limit on it, so that if it gets forgotten in our agency, as large as it is, then we can say, well, it wasn't brought back before the finance committee, so therefore it's not still valid. There needs to be some amount of time, whether it's 6 months, 1 year, some amount of time, and not 5 years, because a lot of things will change in 5 years.
that's
If
fine.
COVID's not over in 5 years, I need to be putting my head in a toilet. So,
Well, the increase is not just for COVID. Like it's
I
hard
know.
to get staffing. So in the event like you have a pandemic with the flu or something coming on, with the flu season that's coming up, it's just not just for COVID. And I think with us amending and issuing purchase orders, we have the authority to delegate when this is valid and when it's not valid by issuing the purchase order. If it's not on the purchase order, the vendors don't have the authority to bill us that rate, because we're not agreeing to it when we execute a purchase order. So this is a contract amendment just for, I guess, not having to go back and forth, because MMO is the administrators of this contract, not my procurement office. So trying to get them and juggle in when we need it, we don't have to get into rotation. It's already done. As an agency standpoint, we can amend a PO versus having to amend the whole contract. So we're asking for permission to amend the contract, so we have the delegated authority to administer and amend purchase orders to execute this purchase. Okay. Barry, are you good with that explanation? Or
I understand what you're saying. I mean, it's not bad. It's just we don't have, it's just, the finance committee would never know how many people we paid what amount of money at that point. Because you don't have to come back to us for anything. And so, and you're also doing it for 5 years, which is a long time. So I would just, I mean, but it's not a big deal. It's probably not at our current stage of money, it's not a big deal, but finance has changed a lot in this agency in 5 years. And so I don't, it's not a bad explanation. It's not a bad situation. I'm not going to pound the table.
Okay,
But
so,
I do think we need I still think we need a amount of time that it would be in less than 5 years that that this would automatically end. But I'm not going to pound the table over it.
Well, with the response to that, we are giving you reports on our annual expenses every fiscal year. Also, when we execute our purchase order, we can give an end date as to when this is valid. I just would like to keep the contract amended and let us give the authority to issue and give an end date on our purchase order versus having to ask for permission all over again and amending the whole contract. We can just
and I mean,
monitor that through our purchase orders because
We couldn't make it. We couldn't. Why couldn't we just make it a 3-year contract instead of 5?
it's already executed as a 5-year contract. So
and since this is around staffing shortages, this particular topic, this particular issue, I think, we should move on because it's a really critical area of need right now. And I don't think we need to require any additional timeline on this particular contract.
Okay, moving on.
Okay, all right. So Pat, these aren't in green or yellow. So what do we need? What do you need? How would you like to move forward on this? Do you want to take it to commission?
I think they should be green.
Okay,
I apologize for.
that's okay.
Green. They're kind of routine.
Okay, so they're routine in nature. One is a new non-service contract, and then one is an existing service contract. So I'm fine with that. So do we want to make a motion to approve these? And we'll just provide information only to the commission that we did this in in this meeting, and it doesn't need a commission vote. But we'll inform them what we approved. So
Right.
Can I get a motion to approve these as presented?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, so these these two contracts are approved. Okay, so the next item on the agenda, the monthly band BNI report, outliers and band changes.
That's tab number 7. We have 4 preliminary staff recommendations contained in attachment A, which is to approve the band increase from a G to an H. Each one would carry an annual increase of $18,561 for a total of $74,000 annually. This BNI project's been going on probably since April. We are down to 5 pending requests, so I think it is coming to a trickling end. But if so, we recommend to approve those 4. And if these 4 are approved, that will bring our total since April to about $320,000 or $330,000. So it's we try to create a safety net for the BNI switch, and I think we backed it up with funding.
All right. Anyone have any questions or need more info on this? Barry, you
No, I'm good with this. We're doing. I think we're doing good with this.
make a motion?
So I'll move that the band BNI changes are approved. I think we're doing a good job with this.
All
Second.
right, okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Outliers are approved. Okay. Item number 8 on our agenda, advanced 2.5 cost of living adjustment, also known as COLA, and processing retirement health appropriations to providers.
That's your yellow tab, number 8. And when we prepared this agenda, we were discussing the consideration of advancing the 2.5% COLA, given the stress with the DOT shortages in the community. This is a lot of numbers to calculate to show that by implementing the fiscal year 2022 local healthcare provider 2.5% pay increase, it would add about $7.2 million annually to the community. And what I want to recommend is that we consider, we don't have to decide today, but I think when I get to my CFO report, I'll talk about a number of issues since this agenda was developed. I'm not requesting a vote today, but just on the crisis conditions of DSPs in the provider community, which we are mirroring in the regional centers, and give you an option list for consideration, probably formally at the next commission meeting, to do what we can to support the community efforts with the tools available to us. And this is just one of the tools available to us. And the normal sequence would be, right now, HHS has our 2.5% rate increase. They will make incremental rate increases. And if you look down here to the bottom chart, about 70% over to the right, they'll say proposed rate with 2.5% COLA. Discounting the orange number, the other six are recommended new rates, and the rate increases are 2 columns to the left, percent increases. And as you can see, these are just small incremental increases, varying from 1.4% to 2.39%, and that's just depending on how much personnel, non-personnel costs they have that it takes to get to 2.5% increase. So that's the math for HHS. What I'm bringing to your attention is we could consider this, along with others, to pay providers in advance by making immediate rate increases through the bands, as well as direct rate increases, while waiting for HHS to provide us the rates, as well as making a retroactive payment back to July 1st. It's an option. We don't have to do it, but we can do it. And rather than have a long discussion about it, I'd rather wait till it's my CFO officer report, and I'll bring a couple of things there, just for thoughts.
So, as I have spent time trying to look through all the options with this particular situation, there are three areas of funds that are right now kind of held up. And Pat, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but as I think through this, in order to kind of weigh in on this request, the General Assembly approved the cost of living increase in what month? July, June?
Early July.
Okay, early July.
When the governor signed off on it.
So he signed off on a 2.5 COLA increase, cost of living increase. And we have not been able to do anything with that money because it has to go through DHHS, correct?
Well, the first step was we had to get numbers from the executive budget office as to retirement and health issues. And that has been the hang up. I met with them last week, and I made some determinations as to how to move forward most expeditiously.
Right, because we want to get this money out to our providers.
Yes.
And so they're waiting on money that was approved by the General Assembly, the governor. In addition, we were also waiting on money from to the 10% FMAP that we're waiting for information
Yes,
and approval by CMS that went through DHHS. So providers are waiting on that money as well. And then what's the third one? The third one is the, I guess it was the respite. So the respite increase was given by the General Assembly in June again, right? July in terms of.
July is when the governor signed off.
Right, so he signed off on a respite increase that we've not been able to give as of today.
We got that approved.
Just like this week, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So those three factors were making me lean towards the 2.5.
Right.
We have that money to be able to front it until we get it from DHHS. So now that we do have the respite money approved, how does that, when will we be able to execute that money? I guess is probably, or.
There's two things that have been approved. Respite was approved,
Right.
and as you know, this morning, the residential rate increase was approved for the $10 million. So right away today, the rate increase goes in effect for all future payments. Okay, that's going to happen. Okay, what ends up happening is the providers, either through bans or billings for residential, the next ban payment that we could get it in would be October 1st, which means we have to have our documentation ready by September 22nd to adjust the bans to get it to them. So that's going to happen no matter what. That's already been approved. As far as the retroactive payment, we could calculate that, and HHS is going to pay us that. And I'm not saying when they're going to pay it. All I'm saying is we have cash flow now to pay it sooner rather than later if we so choose. So those two rates have taken care of themselves. The only question we have on both of those is, do we want to pay 2 months of retrospective, calculate it right away, and make those payments to them so that when we get the retrospective payment from HHS, we're just basically going to be repaying ourselves for fronting those funds. They're easy because they've been decided. The 2.5%, and again, I give HHS a lot of credit. They turn that respite rate pretty quickly, and they turn that residential rate pretty quickly.
Okay.
This 2.5%, for all I know, they're hammering on it today, and I'll have it in a week or two. All I'm saying is it's something that we can consider, and it would basically be, we would start it sooner rather than later,
Right.
and we would pay it retrospective for 2/12 of $7 million would be paid sooner rather than later. So they're all what I would consider small bullets in our arsenal to address the situation. The 10% FMAP would be, if that got approved today, we'd be able to push $9.5 million out once we make the final determination on how we're going to allocate it. And so they're the things that are all available to us. And then obviously the most important thing in front of us is the IDRD waiver renewal rates that are sustainable. But that's a January 1st issue. That's not a today issue. So if I took those three items and combined the 9.5 million, and if we decided at the commission meeting to say, regardless of when HHS is going to pay us our retrospective amounts, we're going to calculate July and August for residential, respite, and the COLA. We could pay them out in lump sums to all the providers
I know you could.
as quick as possible, and basically get paid back when we get the retrospective payments. It is nothing more than a recognition that providers are in a hot spot, as you guys have heard, if you listen to any of the meetings today, to where their staffing is depleted, and they're looking, in my opinion, they got cash reserves or enough cash reserves. What they're worried about is, if I use all my cash reserves to hire people, is my future revenue stream coming? So from our perspective, our future revenue stream for sustainability is the IDRD waiver renewal. That is what is going to sustain us if the rates come through at a reasonable amount based on everything we've seen. All we're talking about here is a short-term surge of money, of which the 10% FMAP was designed. And the three things that I'm recommending are things that have traditionally been done by this agency, and we only stopped for the last 3 or 4 years because we had no money to do it. So it's an option, and we're basically giving them their money in advance
Right.
at a quicker rate.
Right, until we get paid or
Right,
reimbursed.
exactly.
What would be the earliest we'd be reimbursed, do you think?
I was pleasantly surprised on how quick they turned the respite and the residential rates. That was very quick. When they turn the others, I have every expectation they're moving as fast as they can. And so I can't give you a date.
I'm just trying to figure out how long we'd carry it, is what I'm just trying to figure
I'm
out.
trying to figure out if we're guaranteed to get it.
We are here's again, the complexity on the ground is we are told by the General Assembly everybody gets a 2.5% rate increase on July 1st. That's it. Now, waiver rates can be retroactive back. Non-waiver rates can't be. So anything having to do with ICF regional centers or ICF community, we'll get the rate when we get the rate, but anything prior to that will not be retroactive. That will come out of our hide, which has always come out of our hide.
It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to come out of our hide. We don't have to do that.
I would agree that if we fronted it now, we're fronting, we have to pay the 2.5% regardless.
But we either pay it when we have the money, or we pay it
It is a timing issue.
when we
It's a timing issue.
get the money.
And I do believe, in fairness to the ultimate equation, is by fronting it, we might lose a little leverage if there was rate issues. But I can just tell you my personal experience with HHS for the last 6 months has been they've been astonishingly fast and responsive, and everything having to do with the rate seems to happen way faster than I'm used to. Like an amen out there from the crowd. I mean, it's it's amazing how fast they're moving. So I can't promise you. I would say if you want to point a comparison, 2 years ago we did this and we got rates from them December, January. It was late. It was like, Deborah, like the EI rate, the case management rate.
It was late.
It was late.
I have gotten confirmation from Robert that the respite will be in the paycheck, not this Friday, but next Friday.
Respite increase.
It started on Sunday.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I don't play pool, but I know a good cue ball. And if I'm not mistaken, what you said about DHHS, they've already made their move. That means that's a cue ball. So I don't think we need to hold up the process.
It's strictly a cash flow. It's a timing issue from my perspective.
Right.
And it's more work. All the people back there have just added a large part of their workload, but and I would not be moved if I did not feel the voices of the community providers who feel a little panic. Now, they are just in a very hard box, as you know, with a regional center. So I don't think it's a solution. I just think it's a lever we can use in consideration. And I don't even want to spend a lot of time. I'd rather put it on a piece of paper and show you the numbers. And by the time the commission meeting comes around on the 15th, and for all I know, we'll get the rates from HHS. Or I'll have we might be able to see the IDRD rate. So we don't have to decide it today.
Why couldn't we bring it up next meeting whenever we know for sure when more about when we're getting it? Why can't we just table this till the next meeting, next finance meeting?
I was just bringing up in the finance meeting because, my thought was to organize the numbers, and if we feel like there's a receptivity by the commission at the commission meeting, bring it up. So I'm really just brought it up so that I don't surprise the finance committee, because it's really a commission level decision. It's just something to think about, and hopefully this conversation, you can pick up the phone and call me on one-on-one conversation so we don't violate any freedom. But I think it's something to think about, consider, look at some trade-offs. It's not exotic financing. It's things that we've always done that we stopped doing. And I'm only doing it because of the conditions on the ground. And I think anything we can do to provide confidence to the provider community with revenue streams is a good thing. But the ultimate solution is the IDRD waiver rates, which we should know hopefully soon.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I don't see why we shouldn't just, we don't have to vote on it.
Right, we don't.
Let's move it to the
Just using
commission.
it, yeah, as an informational
Right.
Exactly.
time for
Let's
us
not-
to
let's not
understand
hold it
this.
up here.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
All
So
right.
so are you bringing this up at the, so are we tabling, well, we didn't get a clarification about what I said, which is, should we table it until the next finance meeting or should we bring it up at the commission meeting? I think it'd be better I think it'd be better to bring it up to the next finance meeting because this is a finance related matter, which we'll know a lot more in a month from now. But I need to know which we're doing so we can be more prepared for the finance, for what we're doing. Because there's two different things going on here. One is there's two different things going on. So I need to know which one we're doing.
So many events are literally happening in the next 2 weeks.
Right.
My recommendation is we will prepare a white paper and get it in the package. And then before we set the agenda next Tuesday, yourself and Rollins and the other commissioners can make a determination, do we want to put it on the agenda or not? But at least you'll have a document to make that decision. And I do believe a week will make a difference in terms of what could happen with our knowledge of rates or even conditions on the ground seem to get worse week by week.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
We don't have to commit today, we can commit next Tuesday before the agenda.
So, Barry, I'm thinking we'll see what we get back from DHHS in the next handful of days on any of these items that are outstanding that have to do with, rates and budgets and things. And if we have enough info to add it to the commission meeting agenda, then we will add it. And if we don't, we'll hold it as we wait for DHHS and put it on the next finance.
Okay, is this just so I'll know, is this what's going to be on the next week's agenda if we put it on there, exactly what's on here?
What do you mean? What do you mean when you say what's on? What do you mean?
Well,
What are you
number
looking
8
at?
says 2.5% cost of living adjustments, COLA, and processing health appropriations to providers. Is that what would be on the agenda if we're going to discuss this topic at the commission meeting? Or what would it look like so I'll know what to look for?
It would be organized along the lines of fronting the 2.5%, fronting the, fronting the 2.5%, fronting the retro payment for the respite and the residential $10 million increase. They would be the big three things. And then we'd also want to probably get a recommendation from the task force to the commission on how to execute items 1, 2, and 3 beforehand. I'll be able to get that to Commissioner Blackwood.
And that's the 10% FMAP.
Yeah, 10% FMAP.
Yeah.
And the hanging issues there are, how do we allocate budget items 1 and 2 totaling $8 million? We're doing a sensitivity analysis that you should have probably today or tomorrow morning, with some luck. And also, do we want to go back to April for the state funded component?
So Pat is talking about what we talked about at the FMAP task force. Mary, I know you're not on that.
I got an email to that effect, I think Monday. There's something to do with that, but I hadn't had a chance to read that carefully yet, so I really don't know what that's about. That money for the task force has not been approved yet, has it, or has it?
No, it has not.
No, but
Okay.
if we could approve the methodology,
Right, we're trying to, like Pat said, approve the methodology of dispersing the money when we get it. That's what they're working on.
so that when we do get the money,
Options, right.
we don't have any lag between when we get the money
Right,
and the next meeting.
Right,
Absolutely.
which is very critical. So, But anyway, I just wanted to mention that because I know you weren't on that FMAP meeting, Barry, and a lot of this will be drilled down on in the FMAP meeting. In terms of the 1, 2, and 3, those were the items on a chart that was where the money was going to go, the chart, the budget. So.
And this was the Monday email that was just sent, right?
I'm not sure what email you're talking about. Who did it come from?
The one that talks about the plans that we have for, that Pat sent, that we talks about the plans we had for the,
The one we sent this morning has all this in one place.
Okay.
It may not have some of the detail that you're talking about, but they're the things that we're trying to resolve so that we can limit the lag time when we get approved. So I'll just let me organize it, and then you can look at it, and we can add it or parts of it, whatever you so choose next week.
We just need to move it forward from here.
I just don't want to get caught flat-footed
Right.
behind the power curve for a week.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
okay, I have no problem with that.
All right. So, anything else on that,
No.
Pat? Okay. So, fee for service update. It's the next item.
We're waiting for the IDRD renewal to add the tiered residential settings. This morning, had a meeting with the human service providers. Margaret Alwine was there, and they still have not finalized that, but their intent is to get the tiered residential settings in the waiver. They just got to finish their rate work and get it done. And that's the only thing between us and fee for service. And if it does happen, which we hope to expect, that IDRD waiver goes into effect on January 1st. So we don't have latitude to wiggle another month. We got to be ready by January 1st.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so we are getting ready like that's going to happen, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So nothing is going to come up that we say we can't,
I would never say no.
Execute.
I would say no.
so what would come up? What do you think might come up if?
Oh, God, that's not a good thing to start talking about mites.
Well, technology is always the issue, but I look at it, worst case scenario, I can do anything manually.
Okay. So,
Or Debbie can do everything manually.
Don't look at me.
If it looks like this is going fee for service, we need a meeting, the last meeting before it does it, to have a vote, because that is going to be a historic vote, which we will have if it occurs. For the history of this commission, that needs to be in writing and voted on by this commission, if it ain't nothing but days before it occurs.
I hear you. Okay.
That may or may not be necessary.
It will be necessary if they go fee for service. For the history of this commission, it will be necessary. I can assure you. So a lot of people said that could not be done.
That is true. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Forward, so.
All right. So, next item, cost reports.
I got my 2:50 p.m. today update from my cost report manager.
Yeah.
We met and we ironed out the lessons learned from the fiscal year 19 cost report. He has implemented them into the 13 cost report and reworked it to iron out those bugs that were the same. He said he could have it to me tomorrow. He could have me 14 by Thursday. And 15 came in from the CPA in draft form today. So we have to go over the draft and we will rework the draft before I get the final based on what we found in the 19. So I see everything good for this month with a little bit of luck.
Yeah, I think the last time we talked about cost reports, it was, we were going to be done by September, maybe.
It's not
Yeah.
So we're still shooting for that date.
Oh, yeah. 13 and 14 will be done because even if they're worked up, we can get them done. 15 is in draft form. I think we should,
How many months have we been working on cost reports?
years, not months.
Years. So we've been working on these cost reports for years. Literally?
Years.
We've been literally working on it for years because they weren't done when they were supposed to be done by the CFO before the one that was here last. And I could name the name if we'd like for me to, but it is a tragic tragedy of how this has all occurred. But anyway, the point is it's occurring. But yeah, it's been going on for years. It's been going on all the time that Mary was in office.
So are we involving the internal auditor on any of the cost report analysis or processing or anything now that we have
No.
a new one? No? So if we wanted that to happen, we just need to say that, or,
What would they do?
I don't know.
Say, I didn't hear what you said, Robin.
I
What'd
was
you
just
say about the
asking if
internal auditor?
internal audit should, review our process or review what report you come up with. How's that? And just like, are you gonna submit like a report on each one, each year or whatever?
The review comes with HHS,
Okay,
and they have a guy over there, a really smart guy.
okay,
And trust me, he could find stuff that he will be scrutinizing at work. I don't think we need an internal audit to scrutinize at work,
okay.
given their backgrounds and where we're at.
Yeah,
So-
it's really an HHS thing more than an internal audit thing, I think.
Well, I mean, we had talked at some point about, well, I don't know if you remember, but, we had asked internal audit over a year or two ago, why the cost reports weren't done. And, he was brought into that discussion. So that's why I mentioned it, just to see if internal audit, now that we have any.
Well, that internal audit did not have an excuse, just so you know. He blamed it on the other person who I could name, but I won't. But
Well,
I mean,
I just bring it up just because we have a new
The
internal
simple story-
auditor and I
Yeah,
just
I'm
want
not
to make
saying it
sure
would
these
not
things
be-
are done and we want to be, we just,
it might be prudent, Robin, to say that we need to bring them in once we caught up and say, if we want to, and say, this is our process moving forward. That might not be a bad idea. So that this never happens again and so that they can be directly involved if it does, so they can be held accountable. Because the problem with this whole situation is that Pat had to mop up something and other people right before him, the guy right before him had to mop up something that nobody was held accountable for. That's the problem. And so if that would help things be held accountable, I think that's a good idea moving forward, but I don't think that has anything to do with what we've done with fixing it in the past.
all right, well, I'll bring it up with Courtney
Madam
later.
Chair,
Yes,
can we just wait and see what
Yeah.
DHHS comes up with?
we can.
Yeah.
Okay, so next, item, is your report, Pat.
We talked about the DSP crisis. The only other item I have is the fiscal year 23 legislative budget. We turn that into the executive budget office generally at the end of September. I don't know the exact dates. 24th. Oh, less than the end.
So
And
every year in September, we have to turn this in,
yes,
okay?
and we get it approved at the September commission meeting. And this year, I sent out something this weekend with the general background for our options in front of us. Our options in front of us are, unlike the last 4 or 5 years, we're sitting on $54 million in carry forward. We have at least $20 million of 6.2% FMAP still to be realized from July 1st to December 31st. We have 42.5 million, 10% FMAP to be implemented in over a 3-year period. So when we go to the General Assembly and ask for our needs, the question is going to be, what are our needs given our current cash reserves? And our number one need by far will be having a budget request for recurring funds to support the IDRD waiver increase that is going to happen on January 1st, 22. And the problem is, we don't know what that number is yet. We can estimate that number. It could be anywhere from $40 to $60 million of increased expenditures, of which we have to have the state match, which could range between $13 and $18 million. Right now, because of our reserves, we have 3 or 4 years of reserves to fund that. And we're going to have to maintain our reserves until we get recurring funding. So our number one recommendation is to develop a strategy of asking for recurring funding over a 3-year period, just like we did with the dollar raise, which worked very well, so that we can get recurring funding to pay for this IDRD renewal, and that the money that we have in reserves, we will have to, in fairness to the General Assembly, we have plenty of money. It's just 1-year money. It's non-recurring money. And so hopefully they will see a way to give us recurring money, and we may have to use some of the non-recurring money to give them in good faith gestures. So that's our number one need. Number two need would be, we have to always look every year at the number of waiver slots we have. And I thought we were coming up on those, but after discussion with the policy division today, the COVID has really slowed a lot of the activity and also tied up a lot of slots. In the Appendix K, we could not, even if someone stopped using waiver services, we could not take away their enrollment. So we have a lot of slots that will become available as soon as Appendix K ends. And when you take those slots plus our current slots, we may not need any next year, but we've got to do that analysis, and we'll be ready with a number to justify for that. And then after that, the normal requests that we have, we've got to make a judgment as to every year we probably deficit spend in early intervention $4 million in state funds because they're not appropriated. And each year that goes up about $1 million a year. We haven't had that gap filled in 4 years, and we've been funding it at a high, but we have to make a cost benefit decision. Do we really raise that when we're sitting on $70 million? You follow me? Mm-hmm. So that's, some people will say we can do it because we have to get on record, but is there a need at this very moment? I don't think there's a need at this immediate moment because we have cash reserves. So my whole point to all this is we will have a budget, except we cannot have a budget with the number one item left blank, because you can't calculate the number one item until the IDRD waiver renewal gives us its rates. Because if the rates are exceptionally high, that can generate $65 million in revenue, of which we got to have $20 million of state funds every 3 years. If they're inordinately low, then our state funds requirement is much, much less. So our ask to the General Assembly is directly contingent upon seeing those rates. So my dilemma and my question to the Finance Committee is, if we get those rates before next Wednesday at noon, we can crank them into a legislative proposal, of which we can consider, and certainly before then, we can talk about some of these one-off issues such as early intervention, and whether we even want to ask for some of these smaller items, given the amount of cash we're on.
Can you speak to the early intervention issues? Just so I'm on the same page and make sure I'm
early intervention, if we have, let's say we have 3,300 individuals that get service this month, 40% of them do not have Medicaid, 60% do have Medicaid. So when you combine the state funds cost plus the match cost, this year it was $12 million. If you look back the last 4 years, it goes up at least $1 million a year. Some years it's gone up more than $1 million a year. And we've been asking for that for many, many years. Each time we ask, we'll ask for that particular year and remind them that we haven't been funded for this for many years, and we've not been funded for that at all, but yet we keep on expending the funds. So it's not inappropriate to say, look, we expect it to go up 10% and that we need $1 million. They may or may not fund it. They have not funded it. The question is, do we even want to ask, given the amount of reserves that we have?
So these
I don't
are
think you do.
not to age 6, right?
Yes.
Right, okay, so there.
Say what, Robin, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you because of this, where I am and where you are. I wish I was where you are, but I'm not. So tell me again what you just said.
I just am confirming the age, up to age 6, you know, because.
Oh, yeah. I think that,
Till 3, and then they continue with DDSN. And we approve those applications, right, for them to continue on for services
Yes.
based on how their EI filled out the paperwork, whether or not they need to continue to receive
We have all the data on that. I think
family
80,
supports.
I'm guessing this, but it's like 80 or 85% of those that apply from BabyNet. Not all come from BabyNet,
Right,
but
right,
most
right.
of them are just,
Yeah,
they migrate right over,
Yeah,
get approved for DDSN services.
right. And so the early intervention that they're continuing to receive through us is simply the EI time, right? Is it considered does it fall into the case like, the early intervention service provided by that early intervention company, right?
Right.
Provider. It's not the therapies, right? We're not paying for the therapies,
Not the
are
therapies,
we?
but I'm looking for an expert in the crowd.
I'm just trying to think through, my
Yes.
own experiences with
I
BabyNet
believe
and how
It's the once a week visit.
Right, okay. So, which in a way is a little bit like case management, but
Yes.
they're,
Training.
right. And family, I think it's family training is basically, okay.
It's the same procedure
Okay.
code as BabyNet.
Okay, so it's an hour a week,
Right.
right, for,
4 units a month, and then maybe
Okay.
15 minutes.
Right, okay, okay.
it's similar to case management except ages, right?
It's similar to case management, but what?
But ages are different, right?
Well, they're usually, yeah, typically.
I mean, that might be a little
You're
oversimplification.
under 6. You're under 6, or, 6 and under,
Right.
whatever. So most people in case management are old, are, the majority of our case management obviously is more than age, are older than that. So, anyway, I just was trying to figure out, kind of how it fit in the service, what level of service we're providing, and just seeing if that's what I recall that it was and how it was delivered. Okay.
But
Go ahead.
generally, I think that, I don't know what Pat's recommending exactly, but I would say,
Yeah,
I would say generally that with the cash reserves we have, we don't need to be asking for small amounts of money. We need to be asking for the recurring funds like he's talking about, because that is where we're going to end up in serious trouble if we don't have it. Because people think for some reason that money money just burns away if we don't spend it around here. So like it just goes away. It doesn't go away, actually. It's called reserves, is what you can do with it. But the point is that we need reserve money more than we need $1 million here or there. I don't think you want to nitpick them with the kind of money that we have right now.
right, Okay.
It's a budget strategy.
right, okay.
I agree with that.
So when you said you had an early intervention crisis or situation, how'd you refer to it?
I would say that's an example of a small amount of money that we legitimately would ask for in a normal year, because we are expending more funds.
Right,
The
right,
problem is, with all the cash we have,
right.
it may not be the best time to ask for little increases and just absorb them.
Based on the history, right?
Based on
And these are,
personal fairness.
the clients that don't have Medicaid.
They contribute to the cost, but it's an increased cost of the
Because why
net.
wouldn't Medicaid cover what we do with early intervention and?
Because
families?
their family doesn't have low enough financial matters, and they don't have a disability.
Well, I was just saying that we would cover the ones that don't get Medicaid. We're not paying for the ones that get Medicaid.
30% match we pay.
Okay, gotcha.
This is all talking about the 30% match that the state has to pay, right?
For 60% of the
Right,
children,
right,
Medicaid, we pay 30%. For 40% of the children,
right,
we
okay.
pay 100%.
Yeah.
Because they're not Medicaid eligible. It's not an entitlement. That's just the
Yeah,
history
okay.
of this agency and the state. And
Yeah.
that's what we do.
Does that make sense to you, Barry? terms of like,
I think so. Say that again?
so all of the kids that are between 3 and 6 that receive early intervention through DDSN.
Mhm.
Everything's so confusing. So of those kids, okay, half, a percentage of them, 40%, I think is what you said, don't have Medicaid. Okay, so we have to pay 100% of those kids early intervention services till they're age 6. The other 60,
Why don't they have Medicaid though?
because they don't qualify, their family didn't qualify for Medicaid, they applied, they got rejected for some reason. It might have been paperwork error, it might have been the disability isn't, whatever the word is, where they, the paperwork that they filled out to receive Medicaid was either not thorough enough to explain their child's potential disability and or expect or whatever. So they get the, no, you don't get Medicaid letter. And so, but those kids still have deficits of speech, language, we don't think they're getting therapy though, right? Through us, we're not paying for therapy. So they're just getting that 1 hour. So it's really just the continuation of BabyNet because they still need it, because they haven't reached all their developmental milestones in within the first 3 years that they got BabyNet, or depending on how long they were in, however long they got it, they might have gotten it 3 years, depends on when they came into the system. But anyway.
A maximum of 3 years, up to 3 years, basically.
Yes,
depending on when they come in,
and
right?
let's just say that child came in at 2, he's age 2, and he turns 3 and BabyNet says, bye, you're done. We're not paying for your therapies anymore and your family support, family training person, to help the child continue on their progression. DDSN can come in and provide the services for a few more years. And that's the money that Pat is saying we have to cover, because Medicaid won't cover those children up, because they don't have Medicaid yet. They might get it at some point, but they don't have it. That makes sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. We just need to be careful that we're paying for people that, I don't want to say deserve it, but that are just as eligible as everybody else that would have Medicaid. It's a better way to
Yeah,
put it.
we can talk about that later.
But that's
I'll
really
share
not an
some
issue right
examples
this
of
minute.
people who needed it.
But that is something that needs to be put on somebody's agenda around here.
Okay,
So
okay.
that we can evaluate that to make a plan for that. But because that's an interesting concept we just uncovered here to me.
Well, no, I mean.
And just because we've always done something, do what?
Yeah, I'll share some examples of how that kind of happens. And it's valid for the most part, but we can talk about it later, and then we can determine if we want to.
I'm gonna make a note of that because that's an interesting conversation that I'd like to have. But anyway, for purposes of what we're doing now, I think we can eat the money and move on for this year because of the situation we're in. But I don't think that needs to be a 5-year plan. I think that needs to be a 1-year plan that we eat that money.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I'm in that camp, but I'll list the ones the commission can say, hey, do we put them in or not?
yeah,
I don't know if
Okay.
anybody's gonna get heartburn about it, but
Right.
it is a judgment to dilute the most important thing, which is get reoccurring funds.
Right. We don't want to dilute the most important thing. That's the point. And we want to be able to say, a big thing would be able to say, if you were, let's say you were Tommy trying to talk to them about what we needed, say, look, man, all we're asking for is reoccurring funds. We're taking care of ourselves otherwise. So we've never done that before. Say hallelujah to the commission and to the people that are currently working here. We've never been able to do that before, so let's do it now.
yep. Okay. Point taken.
And give us some kudos, we need some kudos once in a while. This agency don't get enough credit. We get enough criticism without credit. But anyway, we're trying to change that. And I'm not talking about the commission. I'm talking about the agency. I just said, for those that are listening, I didn't say commission. I said agency. Okay.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Moving on.
Anything else, Pat, on your report?
Good.
Okay. So the last item, which was added in, is the 6.2 FMAP. I wanted to see if Pat could speak concisely and directly regarding how the agency has spent the 6.2 FMAP, where that money has gone, how the providers have benefited from that money. So I'm turning over to you, Pat.
Okay. Here's an April 6th memo that is to the Finance Committee. I think I discussed this back in April.
Okay.
And
Okay.
first of all, it's not simple.
Yeah, so I want it simple. Is it?
That's hilarious around this. Finance. Go ahead.
You want to simplify the complex, but I'll give it a try. The 6.2% enhanced FMAP
I mean,
is from the federal government to state agencies during not necessarily pandemics, but during basically recessions in order to provide us funds to maintain operations when state funding is expected to reduce, as well as Medicaid roles are expected to swell. This came through the Family First Corona Response Act, passed in March of 20. It was retroactive to January 1st of 20. And we've been getting approximately $10 million a quarter. So we got, again, it's approximately, it might be a click up or down $1 million, but $40 million for $60 million from January 1st through end of this fiscal year. And then we're expecting to get another 10 million for the first quarter of fiscal year 22, another 10 million. So it could be $80 million at the end of the health emergency. If the health emergency continues, it's $10 million a quarter. Now, the money that we got, as you look at the document, we've escrowed every penny separate and apart into a fund that is on the books downstairs. And our model was pull all that to a side because you're normally going to get scrutiny from stakeholders, and rightfully so, as well as the Comptroller General's office required us to account for the funds. The problem with that is, as we are solving problems throughout fiscal year 20 and all of 21, we're using funds from operations as well as funding that was not, for example, the biggest area of underutilization was at-home day programs. And so between that funding and normal operational surpluses, those monies went out to solve a myriad of problems in the provider community. It seemed like there was conversations every month about this, and that generally speaking, we would articulate what we're spending it on, and yet we'd answer the same question the following month. There's a lot of complexity to it, but we got to the point to where I wrote this in the spring, and I sent it to a member of the executive board of the human service providers, as well as this document here to the finance director. And it goes through how we accounted for the funds. And then it talks, I call it a high level estimate of how we spent the money. And I'll just go through it. $9.3 million for board day programs during the period of March 15th to June 30th. $10 million in band payments to boards due to paused waiver disenrollments without corresponding medical billings. That was one of the main drivers to go to fee-for-service or at home, and that is we were paying $15,000 a year annualized for these at-home bands, and nobody was getting any services. And so basically the state was paying for services not rendered, and it's no fault to the boards, that's just the nature of the capitated model. And our whole system is built upon the providers getting the capitated funds, which is basically advanced funds. And then their job is to spend them on services, of which we then get revenue to make the whole system work. The system wasn't working because they weren't spending it, not to any of their fault. It was just the entire state was on lockdown and nobody was getting services for that period of time. So we had to eat all those the bands that we put out that didn't generate any revenue. I go down the list, $3 million increased state claim cost, $1 million to cover basically the early intervention annual growth. We paid money, and you can look at it, and I don't want to go over the list, but we paid substantial funds And a lot of this wasn't necessarily sticking it in the provider's pocket. It was paying for expenses that ordinarily we did not pay for on their behalf. And as we went through the spring and got into May, June timeframe, the question was just how much carry forward are we going to have? And the estimations that we had, I think in February, was probably closer to 30, 35 million. And as we got to the end of the year, it turned into 54 million. Those funds right now serve as the backbone for us to do what we need to do in the IDRD waiver renewal. And if you look at strictly the draft IDRD waiver renewal, and you look at the section pertaining to average cost of services, if those average cost of services were converted to rates, which they may or may not be, that would generate, I think, between $55 and $60 million in additional revenue for the system. So we are going to have a big bill to pay, but fortunately, it's a good big bill to pay because we're getting enhanced services, we're getting enhanced rates, but we are going to need those funds to pay the state match, which would then leverage those funds by 70% with the Medicaid match. So these funds that we've been meeting what we consider every reasonable need for the system, as well as not being fiscally irresponsible, are going to be the funding that we need to make the IDRD waiver work. And if we didn't have these fundings, we wouldn't be talking about making the waiver work because we would have no state funds to move forward. And I think we're in a unique position that historically, whenever we want to have a major rate increase, we'd have to go through the multi-year process of asking for an increase, getting the appropriation, getting the rate. It's just a elongated process here, thanks to HHS fabulous support in really going bold with this waiver renewal. Once they adjust rates to what they consider market or fair rates, as well as cost-based rates, we're sitting on 3 or 4 years of cash to back it up, which makes it financially viable. And we're not being irresponsible spending before we have recurring money because we have at least 3 years of it. And we have the backing of HHS who sees this as a need. So that's the short story for the 6.2%. And there's the memo that lays out the great details of the accounting for it.
Okay. All right. Well, I just appreciate you providing a little more clarity on this since we hadn't really talked about it in a while. And, you know, I think it's important for providers to know where this money has gone and how we've used it and why we're holding some of it and what we're doing with it. And if I have any other questions, I'll follow up with you directly on it. Barry, you have anything on this?
No, I don't. I think it's a pretty good explanation as to why we're holding it, and I think it's a very good use of funds. But so that then this is really why we're able to do what we're able to do with the waiver renewal. So and that's big picture important stuff to do.
Right. All right. Okay. Well, I think we have completed our agenda. Our next Finance and Audit Committee meeting is on October the 5th. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, we're adjourned whether you want to be or not.
We are adjourned.